Welcome into Rollin Illini here at WPGU 1071 UPTV. Wow, it is hot in here. We do not have AC, I believe. I think
It's
you,
1,000
James.
degrees in here.
I think it's you, James. You're too hot today.
It definitely ain't me. I ain't never looked this good before. It's hot.
Could be me. So we have James Wood, of course, Will Gerard, UPTV, and Jason Leggett. We've got Analia Forrest in here. Oh my gosh. Strange.
Hello.
Yeah, so Analia will be a star of a segment in a bit here, but is here to join us for some funsies until that segment. But we have a bunch of stuff today. We have a segment with Pat Anderson, one of the best Wiltshire basketball players in arguably the world. Would you agree with that, Will?
Yes. He is like the LeBron James of wheelchair basketball. At least I saw that comparison made by someone else.
He said LeBron James.
Patrick Anderson's been playing for quite a few years, but he's done a lot for Team Canada. He's won 3 gold medals.
Not too shabby, and of course, most pressing, I guess, is some bigger news for us. We'll be running. Well, my laptop is very hot. We'll be running in the 10K, the Illinois Marathon 10K. Woo! I hope it's not hot like this. So we'll be running in the 10K for the Cerebral Palsy Foundation and Illini Media. Illini Media is our parent company, and we recently kind of built a partnership with the CPF. So we are raising funds and raising awareness for CP. We'll have more on that in a bit. But as we are cooking here, James, let's cook with the Boston Marathon. Sat down with Adam Blakeney and got the latest on Tuesday's marathon.
Yes, I got to talk to Adam Blakeney this week in his office this time around. I know last time me and Ryan interviewed him, it was in like this weird room with nothing in it but like just desks. So in his office this time, a little more intimate, I guess. But he talked to me about obviously the upcoming marathon and how Tatiana and Amanda McGrory, mainly the ones I asked about, are ready to go. Tatiana obviously last season competed, wasn't at her full potential or her full health. She's back 100% now, so obviously he's expecting her to do very well, and Amanda as well. But aside from those two, Ariel Rosin will be competing in Boston, who is I don't want to say she's a student here at the University of Illinois.
Yes.
She hasn't graduated yet. And she has her own 3D printing glove business for wheelchair racing. So shout out to her. I interviewed her a couple years ago, actually. So it's funny how that. Yeah, I'm getting old out here. She'll be competing, and then also he named Josh George. I'm sorry, on the men's side, who isn't technically like on his squad anymore, but he's still like. When I asked him who was competing, he went through like this laundry list of names of alums and alumni. So it was pretty cool to hear him talk about his athletes of the past and how they're still doing well. So he's looking forward to seeing Josh compete as well on the men's side. So yeah, one of the most interesting things he talked about was the racing like training season. So the weather has been interesting, like in this room, how hot it is. He actually talked about how cold it has been for the outdoor season and how his racers haven't really been able to train outside and get prepared for the Boston Marathon on actual like pavement. They've been downstairs pounding out, some workouts and things like that. But outside wise, they haven't been getting a lot of time. But I mean, Tatiana McFadden and Amanda McGrory.
So given that they haven't been outside, how does that affect maybe Tatiana's chances of bringing home another gold?
He was saying that I asked him about this because I said I would assume as a coach in a sport where you kind of have to deal with all the elements, you kind of have to adjust. And he was saying it's just another adjustment. Every season's a little different. As cliche as it sounds, it's not really that cliche when it comes to track because they literally they go from when it's dead cold outside to when it's dead hot. So he was just saying it's an interesting challenge for them. And obviously Tatiana's overcome many challenges throughout her career. Otherwise, she wouldn't be who she is. So, I mean, if you're betting on her not being able to race outside or get as many reps in outside, and you're betting on that to beat her, it's not a good thing.
And fun fact, she has not recently been training here. She's actually been training at Harvard. Not too shabby. She goes to Harvard University every now and then to practice on their track and get some laps in. While the weather is better there than it is pretty much always here. So, with the Boston Marathon on Tuesday, of course, last year's Boston Marathon was, I think, a memorable one for Tatiana, to say the least. She had a pair of blood clots, and it knocked her out of some marathons, but she came back specifically for Boston because of her special connection with the marathon and the bombings. So she came back, got fourth, and then she missed the next marathon in London.
Get fourth with blood clots, like that's pretty.
She's still good.
Right, that's pretty to say.
Yeah, so James, what are your expectations for somebody like our friend Amanda McCrory?
I think she's very hungry, and you can kind of tell by the post she's made after every single race. I don't think she's where she wants to be, like physically, maybe mentally, but physically and the way she's performed. I would say, not to put words in her mouth, but from what she's kind of relayed to us and to her fans and followers on social media, she's not where she wants to be. So I think Boston is a great opportunity for her to kind of get back on track and reestablish herself as one of the best wheelchair racers in the world. So it'll be interesting to see, how it goes. I know the talk is all about Tatiana, which it should be because she's very good. But Amanda is very good in her own right as well. Yeah.
And I know one thing we've talked about is the course in Boston. How does that affect the racers?
They're rolling.
What?
They get to roll.
They don't run?
They roll. I talked to Adam about this, and he was saying one of the biggest differences between Boston and, say, London is that Boston has a lot of rolling hills. So he was saying the athletes that usually weigh a little more, they have a little bit of an advantage because they don't have to give as much effort to move fast or move down the hills and slopes as fast. He was saying that London, which, fun fact, is 6 days after Boston. Yeah. So, just pack your bags and head over the pond. He was saying London is... Big pond. Yeah, big pond, yes. Is more technical, a lot of flat ground, a lot of turns. So that's another element of being an athlete in a sport that's not set parameters for everything. Like basketball, rims this height, court's this wide. You're going to be indoor, all the time. But wheelchair racers, the elements, the weather is one thing. Obviously who you're competing against, the field, and also the course.
Right. Now, Analia, I know you've seen Tatiana practice and do her fun little things.
Yes, I have.
Not so fun to me, though. So take me through your perspective on her workouts routine and what it looks like for you.
Well, from my perspective, while I was working out, gazing at Tatiana in awe, wishing I could do exactly what she does, I was very amazed to look at her determination and how much she doesn't quit in her workouts. What surprised me was when she has support and her coaches there. She's usually independently, going throughout it. She seems very focused and set on track. I really enjoy hearing her stories of some creative workouts that coaches have put her through, such as a lot of different core workouts that would be straining to. I just know I could not do them. I couldn't do them to save my life. So
it's okay, I couldn't either.
No, so it's
Did
incredible.
you, James?
Yeah, it's awesome.
No, I just raised my eyes. I was like, I don't think anybody in this room can.
No, it's
no shame in that.
Yeah, it's very motivating when I'm in the room. I'm usually on a treadmill moving, and when she comes in, I try to slow my heartbeat because I get a little excited. So. Yeah.
I get excited too sometimes.
I haven't watched her train too much in the cycle or anything like that, but usually we're just sharing stories, I think, in the gym.
Huh.
Must be nice.
We don't share stories.
I'll invite you. I'll invite you the next time Tatiana and I,
Yeah.
you know.
Next time you grab coffee,
Yeah.
let me
Definitely.
know.
When
okay?
she's not winning marathons, I'll pencil you guys in.
Yeah, thank you. So James, how does the hilly environment of Boston affect Tatiana?
It probably plays to her advantage. She's a bigger racer than most, obviously, and you could just tell by her. Talk to Adam about this as well. Just how different racers have different body builds. She's a little heavier up top, obviously. They usually most are because of their upper body strength, but shoulders are very broad, arms are very big, so it kind of helps, obviously, when it comes to pushing, and then pushing downhill for her is nothing. So it'll play to her advantage, and we'll see where she's at. I think obviously I was never in this race, but for this to mean as much to her as it does, and then to come back fully healthy this year, knowing what happened last year and this things she's kind of gone through, I think she'll be very focused and trying to get back on the top of that podium.
Yes, and of course the Boston Marathon will be on Tuesday. You can catch it on NBC. And so we will be taking a quick break here on Rollin Illini, and we'll be back with one of the best of the business in motion basketball, Patrick Anderson, and maybe, just maybe, you get to hear some of his music. So we'll be right back for more Rollin Illini here on the WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. Welcome back to Rollin Illini here on the WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. We're now joined by a special guest, Patrick Anderson, U of I alum, now on Team Canada and competing in the Nationals in Louisville for the NWBA. So Patrick, run us through what your schedule has been like thus far in Nationals.
Well, showed up a couple days ago. We got through the first 3 rounds, and we won our semifinal today. So we're facing either Sacramento or Dallas in the final game tomorrow. The game we lost in overtime last year to Dallas. So, we've been eager to get back into this game since the buzzer went last year. So we got that far.
Gotcha. This is producer man Will Gerard speaking. When we were arranging a time to talk for this interview, you told me that how you were traveling on the road with Steve Serio. Correct me if I pronounced that wrong, but how was the trip out to Louisville?
It was all right, actually. Most of the guys flew out, including Steve. I have a couple kids, my wife and I, so we road tripped it out here. So it was a bit of a road trip for us. Took 2 days. Visited some friends along the way, stopped at a YMCA to put a few shots up in Cincinnati. It's a bit of a drive getting out here, but it wasn't too bad.
How long was that drive then for you?
It's like a 12-hour drive, so we split it up into a couple days. And then afterwards, we're actually going to go visit some friends down in Nashville since we've come this far. My wife and I play music together. We have a band, so singer-songwriters. So we figured we should at least poke our nose in Nashville and see what's going on there. Everyone says we should go. So we're going to take that out on the way back.
Yeah, I saw your band that you have with your wife, the Layawakes. I saw you have an album coming out on May 4th. Is that still the date that you guys are, trying to get that music out? And can you kind of tell us a little bit about what it's like, the songwriting process, like working alongside your wife?
Sure. Yeah, that is the date. Actually, we just got some CDs, so we are doing the back of the trunk sales in Louisville this weekend. But it comes out May 4th on Spotify and iTunes and Apple Music and all that. But it's been a journey, to be honest. I mean, we sort of met through sports and through music, but we didn't really make music together for a couple of years. Sort of let the glue set on our marriage a little bit first, which was unintentionally wise. But a couple of years ago, my wife was sort of starting to perform, and I'd always played a little bit. I even played a little bit back in the day when I was at Illinois a few times on campus. And anyway, I'd done it a long time. She was starting to do it. We decided to team up. So we've written a few things together, just sort of passed back and forth, songs in various stages of semi-completion. But yeah, we're still sort of on the ground floor. We released an EP a couple of years ago, and now we have this is our first full-length album coming out. So she does more of the songwriting is on her end right now. But we hope to kind of write a little bit more together going forward. But it's pretty cool to share that with each other. I mean, I'm talking about how hard it's been a bit of a process, but it's been a real joyful one. I mean, and it's been cool. We've been able to hit the road a little bit and be on the road playing shows. It's pretty fun too.
Yeah, just to pivot in a little different direction here, can you tell our listeners out there just what it was like for you playing basketball at Illinois under a coach like Mike Frogley? I mean, he's the director of wheelchair basketball for in Canada. So like, what was it like for you, being here on campus?
Well, that's a kind of big question, but I mean, Frog was in a very generous way. He sat me down when I was in high school and laid out actually all my options. He told me about some of the other schools, and at the time he was coaching at Whitewater. He told me about Whitewater. He told me about Illinois. He told me about Texas Arlington. And he knew at the time he was going to be moving and taking the job at Illinois, but he didn't tell me that because he didn't want to influence me. So, pretty honest move on his part. So I didn't choose Illinois to play for him. I chose it just because I'm from a small town, and Illinois was just like the big school, Big Ten school, just a bigger kind of place. And that's what I was looking for. And it was just sort of a bonus when I found out that Frog was going to coach because, I made the national team the same year I came to Illinois as a freshman. So I was playing for Frog, double dipping, playing for him at Illinois and also back to Team Canada. So such a great teacher. I learned so much about how to think about the game from him and was able to take that back to the national team and have a lot of success with them too. But it was tough. I mean, to be honest, I think he called me an alum. I don't know what the official Oxford definition of alum is, but I only finished my degree a couple of years ago at school in New York because I didn't finish. Because I didn't really get, I was a good high school student, but I struggled after a couple of years trying to balance international basketball with being a student athlete and didn't really reach out for the help I needed to get my papers done. I really needed someone I needed to reach out for a little bit of help with my studies, and I didn't, and it snowballed on me, and I didn't actually end up getting to finish my degree at Illinois. So, in a way, that sort of hangs over my experience to try to encourage kids to, if you having trouble in school, just reach out for help, and as early as possible, because the sooner you can develop those study habits and have some accountability, the more likely you're going to have success in the classroom, which is really what it's about,
Yeah, you talk about some of the...
Was that for an answer? Is that all right?
That's a great answer. You talk about some of the adversity you encountered academically. I mean, what did it mean to you to finally then get that degree from a different institution?
I mean, I guess it meant a lot. It meant a lot to my dad. So, it meant a lot to me, and it was I finally landed on music, which which is what I'm doing now. So. It really was nice. It just allowed me to look back on those years rather than as unfinished business. My years at Illinois, I could look back at them now as sort of the initial step that got me to the next one. Even though I wish I had it finished at Illinois, I could say that I graduated from there. But that's life.
Sure. So you talk about finding that balance between homework and sports. That's something I'm still working on. But now you have wheelchair basketball and music. How do you find that balance and creating music with your wife?
Well, my jumper was a little creaky today, so maybe not so well. I don't know. No, it was just one day. Yeah, if you take it on a day-by-day basis, who knows? But overall, what would I say? Being a member of Team Canada comes with quite a bit of support, financial and otherwise. So the resources that we have in Canada, we're very blessed to have, which don't exist down here for the U.S. national team guys.
Yeah.
So that does free me up to have the time to train and to be a dad and a husband, and also, we get our music in there too. So that's probably the biggest part of the answer. And the other thing is my wife is just super supportive. Her dad played in the NHL, and her uncle played volleyball in the Olympics, and she was a student athlete, volleyball player. And so we both love music, love sports. She's very, very supportive of me.
one thing you brought up is how there is a real focus on wheelchair basketball in Canada. Can you kind of share with us just your introduction to the sport? And one thing I read in an interview you did not that long ago is you talked about how playing against able-bodied players really prepared you for playing on the international level. I mean, is there any more you'd like to comment on that at all either?
Well, yeah, I mean, growing up in Canada came with playing with able-bodied players, and I came along just after that was allowed in Canada. So, and I wasn't really even aware of it until I got older. Realized, so these guys are able-bodied, these guys are disabled, and then as I got even a little bit older, I started to see there's two different tracks. Guys like me with disabilities who had potential were steered towards the national team, and the other guys sort of hit that glass ceiling, which as the years went on, I got more and more frustrated with, because I played with so many great, not only great athletes, but great people, and people who loved the game so much, were so passionate about it as players, but also as coaches and builders, and didn't happen to have a disability, but to them it was just a sport, and I think I learned a lot about them, a lot from them about seeing myself just as an athlete, not a disabled athlete, because I looked around at these able-bodied players who were trying to achieve the same thing I was and facing the same struggles as I was on the basketball court in a wheelchair, even though they didn't have a disability. So I just feel like I learned so much from them in that respect, and also just having more bodies and more athletes to run against in Canada. It's a big country, and that's how we were able to sustain sort of a level of domestic competition that sort of pushed us up to that next level internationally. Wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
Yeah.
In the U.S., there's just a lot more people, so a lot more disabled players. So, in Canada, it was born out of necessity. It wasn't like we had this philosophical thing all worked out. We needed players, so we allowed able-bodied players, and we realized, this makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels.
As someone that's an ambassador of the game in Canada, how have you seen wheelchair basketball grow in popularity, and as a whole, how would you say that the game compares to when you first started playing?
Well, I think the area I grew up in was sort of dominated a little bit more by big guys and high pointers. I feel like players with lower, sort of mid-class disabilities are doing sort of more than ever and are more functionally able, and whether it's a function of the classification system shifting or people training better. So I think it's, tweeners are really doing well. By tweeners, I mean 2s, 2-5s, 3-3-5s. If you're following the classification jargon I'm throwing at you. The game's got a little chippier, I think. If I imagine a game between Canada and the U.S. from 1998, it was very clean. Clean ticks. Everything was just sort of textbook. We played hard, and there were some hard fouls and stuff like that, but it was pretty clean. Nowadays, there's just a lot of more incidental contact. It's a bit chippier and which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just think it's got a little bit rougher. But, on the whole, I grew up in the 90s when the chairs changed really dramatically. Players started strapping more. The anti-tip wheels were allowed in the late 90s for the first time, and that sort of started that was just sort of an accelerator in terms of skill development and some of the things that you could do in a chair. And so you're seeing that with the next two generations now. So it's a little bit more dynamic and fast and all that kind of stuff. But, the last generation I grew up aspiring to, like, some of the best players of all time still belong to those generations. So I can't say that the game has gotten necessarily better, just because I think about how great those 80s and 90s stars were. The guys I grew up looking up to, and I'm like, I can't imagine that we're better than those guys. We're so great.
Yeah, so you talk about growing up in Canada and now being on Team Canada, and you mentioned that there are resources in Canada for wheelchair basketball that the USA does not have. What kind of resources are there that the U.S. does not have?
Well, we have a spot at the table with Sport Canada, which is the federal government agency that provides government funding for amateur sport, and the Paralympic sports are sort of judged by more or less the same criteria as the Olympic sports, but whether they deserve funding and how much they deserve. And so, basically, we get a big pot of money for running our programs and from the domestic up to the high performance level. More we're talking about, I guess, the high performance level in Canada. And then also the players, the top 12 to 18 players get a monthly stipend that, at the top level. You can't live champagne and in campaign, but you can get by. So, a couple countries I think are in a similar situation. I think the British athletes do pretty well, the Aussies do pretty well as far as that goes, but the U.S. guys don't receive either that kind of funding, as far as I know, anyway.
Right.
Certainly not on that kind of level. So that just allows guys to train full time and maybe have a part-time job, and to maybe delay career move for a couple of years while they focus on basketball.
Once again, this is producer man Will Gerard speaking to Patrick Anderson of the New York Rollin Knicks, alongside host of Rollin Illini, Ryan Wilson. One question that I have for you here is, I'm not sure if we've mentioned this yet, but you've won 3 Paralympic gold medals. I mean, do you have a favorite experience from playing in the Paralympics?
I have a least favorite experience. That'll be the silver medal.
Yeah, we can get to that too. That was going to be a follow-up question.
Why would I go there? I'm in a bad mood because I didn't play well today, so I'm seeing everything glass half empty. No, 2012 probably was the sweetest one, because I think it was right at the end of our sort of wave of that maybe began in the late 90s. This wave of talent. And by 2012, I don't know that we were expecting to do as well as we did. And also my wife was there, and it was the first time she had been to the games, and so that was new. And that one was pretty special. And in England, you talked about the growth of the sport. In England, one of the reasons I came out of retirement to play in London 2012 was because just sort of the media landscape suggested that they were really going to cover the Paralympics in a way that hadn't been done before, at least in England, and that was the case. It was really sophisticated, it was funny, it was witty, it was sort of self-effacing but serious. And Channel 4 and cable network over there, they did and got the rights to broadcast the Paralympics, and left the Olympics to the BBC or whoever does that. But they wanted the Paralympics, and all their focus was on the Paralympics. Not like we have to broadcast the Olympics and then we get to broadcast the Olympics and then we kind of have to do the Paralympics thing afterwards, which naturally 99% of your attention is going to be on the Olympics, and what's left over the Paralympics gets. And these guys said, no, we want the Paralympics. So they did a great job. So that was sort of a neat thing, and suggested that that model could work, and that could be something that other countries could do who host, or maybe even don't host, that the Paralympics can generate the kind of interest, can generate interest with a general audience if you do it right, if you cover it right.
Yeah, just to provide some context for our listeners out there, Patrick stepped away from basketball in 2008, but returned in 2011. And in doing so, in the 2012 London Olympics, Patrick Anderson led the team in scoring. And you guys finished the season with a gold medal. One follow-up question I have for you is, what made you want to step away? And then, did you kind of get that itch to get back in the game then after a few years?
We won World in 2006, and ever since then, I haven't had quite the same feeling like I had to play. Up until that point, there was no question I was going to play. But after we won that medal, it was sort of the last box I had to check in my career. And so 2008 came and went, and we lost. I just felt like I wanted to do other things. I went back to school and started studying music, actually, at that point. And the wheelchair basketball world, Paralympic world, just felt a little small at that time, and I wanted to try something a little bit bigger, the world of music, But then, like I said, I started hearing about, the vibe coming out of England, and the guys, I was really still close to the team, still loved to play, I was still playing recreationally, and just sort of drew me back in.
Gotcha. So do you think the 2012 Paralympics were kind of a defining moment for the perception of the games in terms of the coverage and how the media portrayed the athletes?
At least in England.
Mm-hmm.
At least with their broadcast in England. I don't know if that's, I think in Canada we kind of keep moving the ball downfield a little bit at the time. I really don't know the landscape in the U.S. that well, although I know, the NBC broadcast the last couple of games seem to do pretty well from what I heard. So I think it's inching along there. Whereas with England, I think it was a real leap forward, at least for how Paralympians are covered and perceived in that country, in any case. Suggests maybe an opportunity The games are coming to London, or coming to LA.
Yeah. So.
So, anyway.
All right, this is producer man Will Gerard speaking again. I'm glad that we've had this discussion talking about the London Paralympics. It's definitely something that we'll have to do a little research about just to kind of, figure out about that coverage. One last question I have for you here, just kind of end on a fun note, is co-host James Boyd wanted me to ask you this. So where is your, Abby on Twitter from? Where was that picture taken? Because it's a great shot of you just, sitting on the rim in your, Team Canada jersey.
Oh, is that... that's from Sydney, from our first gold medal in 2000. Is it one of me sitting on the hoop with a mesh around my neck?
Yeah, is that the favorite pic? Is that your favorite picture of yourself out there?
Well, yeah. It was the first one. I used to wear Nikes backwards on my stumps, before I got these knee pads I wear now. So you got the shoe in there, you get the flag, the rim, all the important elements in there. Canada on the jersey. And that photo sort of was around, got on all the papers and around Canada and stuff. So that was a big moment. But for me, it sort of felt like the start of something. But to some of the veterans, it was like, this is it. This is for us, some of the younger guys were thinking about the next gold medal already, and the other guys were like, no, we need to appreciate this moment. So yeah.
All right.
So that's a good one. The other, I don't know, I thought you were going to say the one I'm looking pretty ripped. That's this photo from 2004. I don't know if there's broken some sort of internet code or something. Conduct by using a photo that's that old that makes me look that fit. But yeah, I thought you were going to call me out on that one. Thanks for not doing that. I can't call myself out on it.
Of course, we tried not to call too many people out just yet. But thank you so much, Patrick. We appreciate it. And we'll be right back for more Rollin Illini here on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV.
And how everything feels alright. Do you think we're falling in love?
I'm falling in love for Will Gerard. After that song.
What a proclamation.
Yeah, sorry, James, you're in now. But welcome back to Rollin Illini here on WPGU 107.1 UPTV. James Boyd, Will Gerard, Jason Liggett's here. That was a fun segment with Anderson. Great guy, great tunes, and it's not a bad basketball player at all. So we have plenty more to talk about on this toasty show. I'm still sweating. We had the door open, and we had the AC on, but it didn't work.
I'm trying not to think about it, because I feel like I think about it, it's just going to get worse.
Okay.
Now I'm thinking about it.
So, of course, we're doing the Illinois Marathon 10K. We're doing it for the Cerebral Palsy Foundation and Illini Media, our parents' company. And so one thing our audience and you guys will be learning about is kind of CP and life with an impairment or disability. And I hope I've been able to articulate my experiences in some way, shape, or form. Maybe comedically, but...
I believe that you have.
Yes.
You definitely have.
Thanks.
Don't worry.
Appreciate it. But of course, last week we were talking about PAs. Ori was asking me some pressing questions about PAs. So I thought, well, I'll bring in a Hall of Fame PA. How about that?
Before you start interviewing
Oh
him,
my gosh!
do you want to explain to our listeners out there what a PA stands for?
PA.
I thought it was PAL without the L.
POW. POW. So PA is a personal assistant. PA, basically what they do is, it ranges from person to person. For me, they help me get up in the morning and then they throw me in bed at night. Not literally, mostly figuratively, and then they get out.
I saw Ryan just
Yeah.
in the movies where you just...
Alley-oop.
That's right.
Yes. Yes, so they slam dunk me into bed. And so what they do for other people, of course, because of my impairments, I feel like I can do most of my activities of daily living, so the day-to-day tasks, kind of on my own. But for somebody else who has a more severe impairment, they might need help with like feeding or showering or whatever, getting out of bed. So So I've had a lot of interaction with personal assistants, a lot of discussions about that stuff. And Ori Benatar, host of Illini Drive, kind of dove into that last week. And I wanted to bring in somebody who's had some good experiences with being a PA with me. I think they're good, right?
I would confirm. Pretty positive. Pretty good.
Pretty, okay. I'm sorry. Whoopsies.
They're great. It's been great.
We'll see after we ask the question. Yeah.
But, so the
truth will come out.
the bigger picture of bringing Analia on, I think, is to basically stroke my ego a little bit. Actually, no, it's not. No,
Well, it's been nice being here. I'll see you later, Ryan.
No, so with the Cerebral Palsy Foundation stuff, we'll be introducing you guys to CP, Life with Impairments, because I'll be in the 10K in my chair. But Analia, I know you have experienced life in a chair for a little bit, and life not being in a chair. Tell us from your perspective how you felt people treated you when you're in a chair and when you're out.
So thank you for asking that question. There are substantial and significant differences when I was using a wheelchair. I've been able-bodied for the majority of my life, except for when I was in 7th grade, 2009, I was 12 years old. I sustained a hip injury due to an episode of domestic violence that actually became progressive and metastasized, basically progressed until it was almost, kind of too much for me to handle last year in 2017. So 2017, it had been from 2009 to 2017 when I was in and out with doctors to address this pain in my hip and my lower back pain. And so it came to where I needed to use a wheelchair from January to about June with some additional rehabilitation and physical therapy in order for me to, get around campus, for me to be mobile. So differences in how I was treated in a chair and without a chair. So personally, I realized that people can be very oblivious to people that are in wheelchairs. And this means, like physically, like for example, this anecdote, I was going up 5th Street and I was in my wheelchair. I was a manual wheelchair and a pallet had fallen over, blocking the sidewalk. And there were people walking over the pallet, people staring at me, staring at the pallet. And although I assumed they really didn't know how to act in the moment, they didn't know if I needed help, no one asked. And when I reached my hand out and I tapped on a few people's backs to ask for help, which is most often the case for me to reach out, people actually didn't respond to me and they walked on. And although this wasn't a common occurrence, this stands out to me because it wasn't until I had to stand out of my wheelchair. I could still stand, but I needed help being mobile around campus. I had to stand and physically lift the pallet myself and get back into the wheelchair. And what made people stop was the fact that I was in a wheelchair and then standing. And I feel like people might have felt like they witnessed an act of God or something, at the moment, like I had just superhuman strength. But so there are things like that where maybe if I was able-bodied, people might have been a little more eager to help. I think that people don't know. It's not, I think that they were just reluctant or they refused, but they just didn't know how. Something that I enjoyed when I was in a wheelchair was that people smiled at me quite often.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And there's differences in how people smile, though. There's some people that genuinely smile, and I can see it in their eyes, and I try to use that opportunity to connect with them, shed a little bit different light. But there's some people that smile that's not as genuine. It could be out of pity, sympathy, or they're just trying to be kind. And I would challenge every able-bodied or person with a disability to smile at anyone or try to connect that way. I think if you're going to target a specific population like that, I think that everyone could use that type of treatment. As a personal assistant, like you said, I've been your personal assistant in the past. I've been personal assistant for other people for activities of daily living as well as instrumental activities of daily living, like helping people with finances and other applicative types of help.
I need help with my finances. Go ahead.
I'll help you with your taxes. We have till April 15th, everyone.
Oh,
So
see? You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so helping others, for example, I've helped people travel in planes. I've driven people across the country. Yes, exactly. Illinois to Florida. It's been a memorable trip. So
That's love, because my goodness. After hour like 6, I'm ready to dive out the car full speed.
yeah, so it was a very fun time. But with that, people are, when I first started traveling, I assumed that people would become obstacles, But so many people were really willing to help out. People are always willing to help, especially if you treat them with kindness, if you're open-minded, open-hearted, if you're not demanding, really, if you're polite. But people are a lot nicer to my friends that were using wheelchairs than they were to me, which is what I thought was really strange, and I challenge everybody to be as kind as you possibly can to everybody. But that's something I experienced with how I was treated by others.
That's pretty interesting, I must say. Let me ask you this. How did you kind of handle the people that want to help too much? Because I feel like sometimes I'll speak from my own personal experience, interact with people with disabilities or impairments. It's like when I first met them, I want to be this, show them I'm a good person type of thing.
Of course, so in the moments when people were sprinting to open doors for me, or and otherwise little things too. If I dropped a pencil and someone rapidly goes to snatch it up off the ground, we share a moment there, and usually it's I thank them, and it depends on the situation. So if someone's opening the door for me, or for example, I can interject and say, "Oh, I got it. Thank you very much for your effort." For people that are closer to me, I would probably treat a stranger that way, or respond that way. People that are closer to me, I would actually express thank you very much for offering, for trying to help me. But it would really mean a lot to me if you could ask next time, because I could express how I need help, or I could tell you what I need help with. And I think that really transformed a lot of my relationship dynamics and improved a lot of listening in my relationships, because it's not just listening for how I needed help physically, like a door open. Sometimes it's also if I needed someone to talk to, I think people were a little more willing to help as well.
Wow.
Right now, I feel like I'm in a philosophy class.
Where have I been? I don't get any of that.
That was pretty cool.
Well, so you talk about listening. What do you mean listening? How you learned how to listen? What do you mean?
So I'm specifically regarding presence. I'm talking about focus and a presence, an active listening, and it's not a passive experience where I'm hearing you, Ryan, or I'm hearing you, James. I'm talking about somebody validating and truly listening to a request, to anything, to a statement, and offering a type of validation by their presence, either an emotional response. One of my favorite quotes is that it's good to be loved, but it's profound to be understood. And I think that a lot
that was actually pretty. I'm gonna tweet that out later, get a few likes. But no, seriously.
Ryan was laughing at James's reaction, not the statement itself. Just to be clear for the listeners out there.
Yes. So, and so I knew a lot of people loved me through that experience, through that transition. I made a few social media posts where people showed a lot of support, and I was also took that upon myself to be educational and use that platform to do education about people with disabilities, and so that was pretty good for me. But so I saw an increase in the way that people could be present with me. Because also it was an aspect of novelty as well. There was a new thing that people needed to learn about because they weren't familiar, so they took more time to pay attention to that.
Learning every day.
All right, now when we were off air, we heard a story about. I had to push Ryan one time. How, aside from the physical things that you have to do occasionally, what kind of goes into being a PA as far as emotional, the supportive, just the friendship side of things? that I guess we don't even see like on a job location or things like that?
That is an incredible question that I wish employers even asked.
I don't ask that question.
Yeah, so it's true. There are a lot of, so it varies person to person, right? There are a lot of different expectations. Also, sometimes we have hidden personal expectations. We have, it's curating our own relationship with somebody, and so we have our own private experience with that. In my experience, I'm a personal assistant, but we have many different schemas. We have many different facets, right? Facets to ourselves. So I'm a personal assistant. For some people I assist, I'm a personal assistant and not a friend. To some people, and it's not that I'm not friendly or anything like that, but it's that there are stronger boundaries and there are professional boundaries in place. I'd like to be specific about that. So, but there are some relationships that I've had with what I would call my employers, as I get paid to assist them. I've been supportive. I think it's not a one-way thing. It's a two-way thing. The best relationships that I have are experiences where I'm also emotionally supported and I'm seen holistically as a human being, as a person, not just as a personal assistant, and where I'm viewing my employer holistically as a human being and not just as my employer. So we've there's times like eating out, going out to eat or, spending time with each other. And sometimes we have quite a bit of downtime if we do trips and things like that. Ryan and I have had that experience where we went to Colorado to look at alpine skiing, some training. So that we had quite a bit of downtime to talk.
So on that note, tell us about the trust that you experience as a PA. So the employer trusting you that you won't drop them, or even you trusting the employer to give the proper instructions or communicating with you.
So this aspect of trust, which we're not always aware of in every relationship, but that exists, becomes very evident in a relationship between an employer and a personal assistant, especially when you're physically doing tasks that help activities of daily living. So when I'm lifting someone, whether they're 50 pounds or they're 150 pounds, sometimes, cradling them in my arms, we are relying on communication and open, genuine communication. I only have the information that's given to me. So if someone, it's kind of this dynamic between, I want to make a safe space. I want someone to be able to come to me and say, hey, I'm emotionally uncomfortable or I'm physically uncomfortable, please adjust something. I also want that with them, so I would like to express to my employer, hey, this time isn't working for me, or can we adjust this, or, can we adjust a lift, some type of task. And so I think it's about creating that space. Of course, it's an intimate thing. It's not only emotionally intimate, it can be physically intimate at times as well. So there can be a lot of trust there. I think without trust, I don't think it would work out very well. So,
You guys have learned about that.
Yeah,
Oops.
seems to be just a full circle, type of thing. That's pretty cool.
Just to pivot in a little different direction here and to end on a fun note and maybe, stroke Ryan's ego a little bit. Can you kind of tell me about how your guys' friendship has developed over the past few years?
Oh my gosh.
that is a very
Because
hard
he doesn't
question.
have many friends. So
Jeez.
It's just you guys,
I
okay?
had to hit him back down, Will.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I would like to say it started with courage. I would like to say our friendship developed with courage and for both of us daring to be vulnerable with each other. Although when I met Ryan in the capacity that I was to be his personal assistant and I was professionally employed by Beckwith in the University of Illinois, it took both of us to choose to dare to have the courage to be vulnerable with one another. Ryan might be in a position where there's, you are like physically vulnerable or, there's, if I'm assisting you with some things, but we choose to be emotionally vulnerable with one another. And when you create that space, I think often there are times where we think that vulnerability is a sign of weakness, but it actually can quite strengthen you and really increase boldness, and it really, really helps support trust. So allowing each other that space and that freedom to do that Also, our sense of humor. Oh my gosh, let me tell you. I've worked with Ryan for every year that I've been at the university. And every shift we're laughing. Ryan is just sighing, crying right now.
He's just looking.
Regret. I can see it on his face.
We've been around.
we really have. We've had some fun times, but I think that our friendship definitely spanned way outside of our shifts, and I think would continue outside of our shifts and role. My role as his personal assistant. It's really, really hard to describe. I think it's been one of the most fulfilling things I've done as a professional, but definitely one of the closest friendships I've ever made. Ryan, you can tear up anytime now. It's okay. But yeah, so it's been pretty incredible. Definitely a sense of humor and a great conversation fueled a lot of awesome shifts. I would say that.
Probably just sat there giggling like he is now.
Oh man.
Wow. Great question, Will. I think that was your best question ever.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
By far.
Oh goodness.
And James just rolls
We gotta
his eyes.
get Ryan on the photography gig one more time to humble him again.
Photography.
Photography.
What are you talking
No,
about?
I've seen him with the chair cam. He's quite skilled.
Oh my.
As well.
I've seen him with the 2 a.m. cam, and he's quite skilled.
Oh yeah. We mention this every show.
Does she know?
I think I told you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Interviewed Rockno Micklebust at 2 a.m., took a screenshot, and doesn't look like a good conversation we're having.
But it was a fantastic interview.
Of course. The interview makes up for it because
Yes, yeah, that
picture was useless.
that picture represented an awful experience.
That was just a rough week for everyone. Not much sleep.
Yeah.
Nah, but much better than the picture of me on social media right now.
Oh, you look great,
Thanks,
buddy.
James.
You look great.
Yeah, so on that note, we have the Boston Marathon on Tuesday, London Marathon 6 days after that, and of course, we'll be running in the Illinois Marathon 10K for the Cerebral Palsy Foundation and Illini Media. So definitely stay tuned for some fun content, and we'll be posting on our social media pages, Facebook and Twitter at Illini, the link to help us raise funds for CPF and Illini Media, and of course, the ultimate goal, as James put it in a little commercial that we're going to air sometime. Basically, the idea of our show and the idea of the run is to kind of spread love and as Amanda McCrory put it, to accept body diversity. So on that note, thank you so much for joining us, Analia.
Thank you for
I
having me.
feel
Ryan.
much better now. My ego is stroked. So for James Boyd, Will Gerard, Jason Liggett, and Leah Forrest, I'm Ryan Wilson. This has been another show of Rollin Illini. I am really hot on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV.